Hello everybody and welcome to the British Pint. My name is Christoph and today we're tasting my copy of the Meantime IPA, the Meantime Now IPA, made by the Craft Beer Channel in cooperation with the Meantime Brewery in Greenwich in London. And it's really interesting because I'm not sure how this beer turned out. I actually gave it to people from my homebrew club, from the regional homebrew club yesterday, but I didn't drink any of it because I still had to drive home. And yeah, people were quite happy with it, didn't give me too many hints with what they tasted. And one person tasted a bit of oxidation, which would be really a pity if I get that here. I hope that's not the case. We'll see. Fermentation worked really nicely. I think it's the very first one that actually attenuated to exactly the degree that I wanted to. And this is probably because normally my beers always attenuate more than the commercial ones. This time it's probably because I have 100% Chevalier. The original recipe from the Craft Beer Channel is now out, and they used 50% Chevalier and 50% Golden Promise, which is an interesting choice. I wouldn't have done that for a beer that is probably served at a colder temperature. Golden Promise, at least the one time I did a bottom fermented beer, I noticed that it is quite watery at 4 degrees Celsius, and the intense mouthfeel and malt flavor only comes out when you get it a bit warmer. But maybe in the UK they're serving it a bit more warmer than they would do with highly carbonated drinks, usually maybe in America. I'm actually not sure how the carbonation of all these beers works. Normally I would carbonate my drink a lot, but since the attenuation was quite low, I actually have this slightly lesser carbonated, so it will be a bit more difficult for the aromas to reach my nose. This is the reason why you want to have high carbonation levels. And this might also be the case why less oxygen was washed out of my keg. I have 5-liter kegs for keeping these for the maturation, and 3.5 liters of liquid were only in there. And so normally if you have enough carbon dioxide, it will just wash everything out through the safety valve that opens after a certain pressure. Maybe this wasn't the case here. We'll see if oxidation is too high. As I said last time, I did testings with these modern English hops, modern British hops, New World tasting British hops. And I find them quite neutral. You can see that in the old video where I checked these for dry hopping. So I'm very curious to see how these hops act. I didn't have Harlequin. This is the main difference between my recipe and the one from Meantime. And also they did a 5-minute edition. The recipe is out now. You can find it in the description of this video, or you might have seen it already in the description of the previous video where I did the recipe of my own. But yeah, I didn't have any 5-minute edition. I have higher IBUs. I had 100% Chevalier, and I don't have Harlequin. Everything else was pretty much the same. Anything else I want to say? Oh yeah, if you don't have Harlequin, you can use Mosaic. For all the other hops, I guess you need to buy them, but you can get them, for example, in Germany. I think they are quite popular. I think they are quite easy to get compared to other hops. And the last thing I noted is that I think my Chevalier is just not very nice to get high yield, because it's not protein that you get that gets precipitated during the boil that I lose. It's really just extract that I'm missing. And I'm just going to continue using a lot of Chevalier. I have the stuff that I'm using for my historical brews that will be coming up in the next months, and so we'll see. Yeah, just a bit of fizz, a bit of carbonation. It already smells quite intense, so this is promising. Now, something that I immediately notice is that this beer is quite cloudy, and this is another sign that I really don't like this yeast. As I said, this was my third attempt. First and second were really not promising and not satisfying, and it still didn't precipitate nicely. So this might be a yeasty flavor. There might be too much yeast. It might be, well, it shouldn't be tired. I oxygenated it very well, and I had a starter and everything. The yeast should be as happy as it can be, and I'm not sure what's happening there. But it definitely might smell yeasty. We'll see. Okay, so it starts smelling a bit banana-like, which would be a tired yeast, but it very quickly actually turns into something fruity, and it's exactly the type of fruitiness that I was also bemoaning in these dry hop tests that I did. There's just no clear intense flavor. I think actually the Kashmir in the dry hop is quite noticeable, because there's this slight mango pineapple note, and around that is just a huge mix of berries of all kinds. So I did say gooseberry last time, but I wouldn't recognize it in here. But it's just, yeah, complex, intense mixture. I'm wondering if there is any sign of oxidation. None so far, I would say, because it is a bit darker, but this might just be the yeast that's in there. Oh, also all my beers with Chevalier have been very cloudy, so this might also be a very intense chill haze. Very intensely flavored. Okay, so the intensity is really on par with other IPAs that I did so far. I think this is quite decent. I don't think the hops are too weak or anything in that case. Very nice, full flavor, very fruity, full mouthfeel, malty. I actually taste some sweetness from the malt. Yeah, it matches the high final gravity that I had. And what else can I say? It's really, yeah, it's quite bitter. Mine is a bit more bitter than, as I said, as the original. So the original was 35 IBU, I think, 38, something like that. I did 45 IBU, and it has a strong, lasting bitterness, which is not harsh. It is quite mild, but it is a bit too much for these gentle hops. I think also the hopping rate was a bit higher in the Craft Beer Channel's recipe than I did. What I think they did is they changed the recipe quite a bit to get it to work properly for a 20-liter setup. And I took their notes that they used when describing their meantime brew. So those were the notes during their Q&A video. It's very difficult for me to describe the fruitiness because it is less intense than the malt flavor. Malt is really biscuity, fruity, maybe some people say orange marmalade from Chevalier. I wouldn't be saying it that clearly, but there's definitely some honey, some yeah, just sweet cookies, biscuit, stuff like that. Just yeah, going towards fruitiness, but not really strictly fruity. What else could I say about this beer? I have the same feeling as I did when I first did a brew with Ariana, which is one of the modern German hops, and that one was also quite less clear in the hoppiness. What fruits are there? What flavors are there? And that also comes from the fact that the late editions and the Whirlpool and the dry hop give very different fruits. So for Ariana, you have like honey melon in the late edition, and you have red berries in the dry hop, and these are just so complementary that it's very difficult to understand what's happening. Yeah, difficult to say. It's definitely, there's some tropical fruitiness in there, which might be some Kashmir, but I guess also the other hops. There is quite an intense fruity, sweet character to the beer. I find it very difficult to say what's happening here, and the reason is obviously because I mix a lot of hops. So I think I will have to do some pale ale test beers with only late hop edition of one hop, only Whirlpool edition of one hop, stuff like that, to really get to the bottom of this. Yeah, it is a very nice beer. It is a bit too bitter, and the yeast does take a bit. I think there's some murkiness, some dankness towards the end, which is covered by the bitterness afterwards. But I don't think it's anything bad. It would be nice to get a clear beer once, but maybe just the Chevalier itself is already preventing this. Okay, that would be it, I think. Very nice beer. If you want to do the real recipe from the Craft Beer Channel, do check out the video description where you can find that either in text or as a link. And then I'm looking forward to some more historic brews or maybe some fun clones. I was planning on doing more test beers, so maybe those will be coming up soon. And then one goal on the long term is doing the full party guard from Fuller's, which I'm really looking forward. I actually got some bottles with yeast sediment from Fuller's. There's the India Pale Ale, which is sold in Germany with the sediment. So I'm going to try to get the yeast from there and yeah, just try to get everything proper. That's everything for now. And then I would say see you next time. Take care.